Hello everyone, this is VGTI and I'm here with another Undertale theory. Now, just to forewarn you guys, this is actually going to be my last Undertale theory about Gaster, at least for a little while, until I think of something or until I see something interesting. But this will be my last one related to Gaster for a little bit, so just keep that in mind. I've talked about him a lot. In my first video, I kind of overviewed who he is and what people have found out about him, and in my second video I made this crazy conspiracy theory that Kara took control of Gaster. But now I'm going to get to the heart of the matter with Gaster, and that is, what is his relation to Papyrus and Sans? And in the course of this video we are going to find out what Sans is, why he knows what he knows, why he is trying to do what he does, what his relation to Gaster is, as well as how it extends to Papyrus. So let's get started. Now, this theory came about thanks to you guys. You guys mentioned in my first video and my second video for Undertale that Sans and Papyrus could be Gaster. They're just extensions of him. They're separate pieces of Gaster's whole, and he basically created them by putting his essence into them. Now, how does this work? Well, we're going to find out, but that's the theory that I'm going to be running with here. You guys presented that theory, and now I'm going to try to expand upon it and tell you what I think that means for how the story went and what actually happened to Gaster, as well as what it means for Sans. So let's go with that pretext. Sans and Papyrus are Gaster. Where do we get this from? Well, there's multiple pieces of evidence that link Sans to Gaster. There's not really anything for Papyrus, but considering that he's Sans' brother, he ties into this too. First off, a lot of the stuff that Sans has relating to Gaster can actually be found in-game. You don't have to hack or data mine or anything like that. You just have to do a specific thing to actually find it. Obviously, Sans' room is hard to get into, but if you play the Genocide route and reload your save a few times just before you fight Sans, then you will discover that he will start noticing what you're doing. He'll actually give you a key to his room. Now, long story short, this leads to you ending up going into his room, finding another key, and this leads to a hidden room behind the house. Some call it a basement, but it's also called Sans' workshop. What you find in there is very important. You find a photo of Sans and people that you, Frisk, do not recognize. And you also find a badge. Then you find a set of blueprints that relate to a machine. These blueprints are written in strange symbols, and many believe that this is relating to Gaster because his associated font is Wingdings, which is a font composed entirely of strange symbols. So there is that, but then we have the mysterious machine that's in Sans' workshop. When you look at it, it says that it appears to be broken, and it's easy to assume, based on this machine being right next to these blueprints, that those blueprints are from Gaster himself and that they relate to this machine in some way. But what does this machine do exactly? Well, it's not quite clear, but it is clear that it's broken and that Sans is trying to fix it, and I believe that this machine is actually Gaster's creation. His followers mentioned how he fell into his creation and that this is basically what caused him to be wiped from existence. But what exactly does this machine do? I believe it relates to this theory and how Sans and Papyrus were created. We're going to go back in time now to when Gaster was around. He was testing out how he could work around with the soul. And this will tie into entry 17, which is a hidden entry from Gaster that I actually forgot to mention in my first video about him. This entry was data mined from the game and appears to be from Gaster because it was all written in Wingdings, but when everybody deciphered it, they found out that it said this: "Dark, darker yet darker the darkness, keeps growing, the shadows cutting deeper, photon readings negative. This next experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think?" Now, everything about this machine that is in Sans' workshop relates to this specific entry from Gaster, because it's very telling. A lot of people have different theories about who Gaster is talking to in this, because he's directly talking to two other people. He asks, "What do you two think?" There are various theories, but the most common is Sans and Papyrus, and that's what we're going to go with for this theory. But some other interesting ones include Sans and Alphys, or Toriel and Asgore. So let's assume that he's talking to Sans and Papyrus. Why are they working with him? Well, the fact is that they're not. They are actually part of his experiment. I believe that Gaster used this machine that is in Sans' workshop to mess around with his soul. He was testing the limits of the soul and what he could do with it. And in the process, whether accidentally or on purpose, that's up for debate, he ended up creating Sans and Papyrus. This happened because his soul was split into two. It was split into Papyrus, and it was split into Sans. Once his soul split into two, it created two entirely different beings that had different aspects of Gaster's personality. While Papyrus got the more outlandish, goofy, outgoing side of Gaster's personality, Sans ended up getting the more intellectual, curious, scientific side of Gaster. And this relates directly to how those two act and what they can do in battle and outside of battle. But before we get to that, we need to figure out what exactly happened to Gaster after this. What happened to him when he created these two? His followers said that he fell into his experiment, but what exactly does that mean? He fell into his creation. But when you look at the machine in Sans' workshop, assuming that it is Gaster's creation, it doesn't look like there's anywhere for him to fall inside it, unless he got absorbed into it or something. However, what I believe is that Gaster's demise relates to how he created Sans and Papyrus. Like, it's cool and all that he split his soul into two different monsters. That's amazing. But at the same time, this likely had side effects on Gaster's soul and being as well. It started to make him fade from existence, because it's almost like a contradiction that he has two different versions of himself living outside of himself. It basically made his self null and void, and he started to fade away from existence. Now, whether this happened instantly, or whether it happened gradually, is up for debate, but considering how he has this entry that is apparently him talking to these two, it must have not been completely instant. However, do also keep in mind that this entry has to be data mined, which could relate to the fact that Gaster is out of existence, could relate to the fact that he's not in the game, or whatever you want it to mean. Whatever the case, it's up for debate whether it happened instantly or not. But now we get to the second part of the theory, which is, how does this relate to Sans and Papyrus, and what exactly happened to them after Gaster disappeared, their creator, their original self? Well, the thing is that what seemed to happen with Gaster is that once he faded from existence, whether this theory is true or not, everybody seemed to forget about him. And this makes sense. He's erased from existence, so why would people remember him? It's basically the universe's way of correcting everyone's memories by just erasing Gaster from them completely. And this also applied to Papyrus and Sans. Yes, they were a part of Gaster, but they weren't any longer. They're their own separate selves, and because of this, they also forgot about Gaster. So this begs the question, if Sans supposedly forgot about Gaster, then why is he keeping Gaster's things inside his workshop? Well, that's just the thing. He did forget, but he soon learned the truth very shortly after his memory was wiped. Keep in mind that Sans got Gaster's scientific curious side, and because of this, Sans is very smart. He's a super intellectual monster who understands a lot about how the world works, how humans work, and how their souls work, how saving and loading works. He got this knowledge from Gaster because Gaster was the former royal scientist. He likely did research into these kinds of things, and that's why Sans retained that knowledge. With that knowledge, he also found Gaster's things. Sure, Gaster was erased from existence, but things like his blueprints and his machine were left behind. Once Sans found these, he probably connected the dots together to figure out what exactly happened and where he and Papyrus came from. It's in his workshop because he's trying to fix it. We find out by examining this machine that it apparently is broken, and that leads to the assumption that Sans is trying to fix it. And while that is an assumption, the thing is, we've gotten confirmation from Toby Fox himself that this machine was trying to be fixed. How do we know this? Because of a reply he made to a certain Twitter user. The conversation went like this. Toby tweeted, seems like people are already pushing the limit to the amount of fun they can have with this game. This was a reference to the fact that people were changing the fun values of Undertale to hack into the game to data mine it and find things about Gaster. After he tweeted this, someone replied to him saying, "We just want everybody to be happy, Toby. Unless you went genocide like me and can't revert it, so I'm stuck with Evil Frisk." Toby then shortly replied after, saying, "You've all seen the happiest outcome. Neither of them could fix the machine, no matter how hard they tried. No one can." Now, there's a few things that this tweet could mean, but keep in mind the fact that this is happening in a conversation that's about data mining the game by changing the fun values and finding things about Gaster. So what Toby seems to mean, and I'm just going to theorize here, I believe he meant that you've all seen the happiest outcome and that they couldn't fix the machine. Now when he says they, I think he meant Sans and Papyrus, which is kind of surprising, but I think Papyrus knows about this a little. Sans likely told him, and they both tried to fix the machine. He could also be referencing Sans and Gaster, but I doubt this is the case because Gaster was the reason the machine broke in the first place. He could be referencing another character that I'm not naming, but I'm not sure at this point. What I think Toby is trying to say with this tweet is that you can't change the ending of the game, even by finding all of these things. Gaster is out of existence for good, and he's not coming back, because nobody can fix this machine no matter how hard they try. Sans has been trying, but that's because he was freaking out. I would imagine that when Sans found out the truth after his memory was wiped, he freaked out about it. Just imagine if you were in his shoes, realizing that you're not actually yourself, but you're just a copy of somebody else. He probably wanted to fix the machine to get things back to the way they were, or at least bring back Gaster, but it didn't work. And what this all culminates to is Sans' fight in the Genocide Run. There's multiple hints connecting him towards Gaster and towards this theory in that fight. For one thing, he uses those weapons. You don't find out in the actual game that they're called Gaster blasters, but people found this out by data mining the game, that that's what the weapons are called. It's easy to assume from this that Gaster's weapons, the Gaster blasters, were his. They're shaped in the same shape as the determination extractor that's found in the True Lab, which is likely where Gaster did quite a few of his experiments, if not all of them. But the most curious thing about this fight is that Sans says a specific comment. He's going on a rant about how you don't understand what it's like when you have to know that the timeline is going to be reset soon or that it's going to end. He's referencing the fact that he can see the future, that you are going to end the world. But after this rant, he also says, "Look, I gave up trying to go back a long time ago." When he says this, I believe what he's talking about is trying to go back to the way he was, back to being Gaster, being a part of Gaster. He says that he gave up trying to go back a long time ago. And you may say, oh, isn't he just talking about going back to the surface? But no, the next thing he says is, going back to the surface, well, that wouldn't work either. So when he says either, that's also a reference to the fact that it's a separate thing. Not only did he stop trying to go to the surface, but he also stopped trying to go back. Back to what? Being Gaster. He realized that the machine's broken, it can't be fixed, he couldn't go back, and because of this, he now lives on doing what he does in Undertale. Guarding the world from humans and making sure that no chaos happens, and this just depends on how you play the game. But basically, Sans is stuck. As for his crazy teleportation powers and his powerful fighting moves, I believe that's just magic on the fact that he's a monster. He's more powerful than Papyrus for sure, and I believe this just stems from the fact that he inherited that part of Gaster, along with his personality. And of course, the one final piece of evidence in all of this is the little comment that the shopkeeper in Snowdon says about Sans and Papyrus. When you ask about them, she mentions that they actually came out of nowhere one day. Just completely out of nowhere. They just showed up one day and that was it. So apparently nobody knows where they came from. They just showed up. And likely this goes into the fact that everybody forgot about Gaster, and after that, Sans and Papyrus just appeared. They're new people, strangers. So, that's the theory. What did you guys think? I've been thinking about this one for a while, and thanks to you guys, I was able to piece it together piece by piece, thanks to your comments on my last 2 videos. I do appreciate it. It's a very interesting theory, and I myself am a fan of it, because it definitely explains some of the weirder things about Sans and Papyrus. So, let me know what you guys thought of this theory in the comments. Let me know what issues you may have with it, whether you want to add on to it, or whether you have a theory of your own that you want to leave. Just type out your thoughts. So, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, then please like the video or go about your business. And if you like video games, video game theories, Undertale, Gaster, Sans and Papyrus, whatever the case, please subscribe. Look forward to whatever is to come, which I will say right now, just as a forewarning, my next video is going to be one more Undertale theory. There is one more that I want to talk about, and it involves a certain character that I have talked about before. So we'll see how that goes, but it's going to be coming up soon. Sorry about all the Undertale lately, guys. I just really gotta let out my thoughts about it. So look forward to that when it comes. Shouldn't be too far from now, and I will see you guys in the next video.